Well, let's get started here. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our conversation today. Cyber trends in 2026. Attackers don't hack anymore, they just simply log in. So, thanks for joining. Today, we're going to simplify what's changed in cybersecurity and what it means for your business. We're going to try and keep this really practical and what we're seeing in the field and what you should be thinking about and doing next. So, quick introductions. My name is Rob Schenk. I'm with Intelligent Technical Solutions, and we help small and medium sized businesses thrive by managing and securing their technology. A couple of quick housekeeping notes before we get too into things here. Conversation should run about 30 minutes or so. We'll stick around for some questions at the end. Conversation will be recorded, so you can review that at your convenience. Happy to take questions during the webinar. So you'll see in the Q&A box in your Zoom toolbar, you can go ahead and submit your questions there, and we'll have some time for Q&A at the end. Alrighty. You will see a QR code in the top right. So you probably want to take a look at that. That's going to lead to a special offer for attendees of the webinar. In case you need to leave early, you might want to just scan that. And for today's discussion, I am privileged to welcome our special guest, Earl Fischl. He is Director of Service Strategy at Field Effect, and he brings to us over 20 years, 21 years of cybersecurity and data analytics experience, and this spans operations, strategic management, and government service. He has a unique background in political science, and that enables him to approach cybersecurity not only as a technical challenge, but also like a sophisticated espionage issue. So he blends kind of technical and tactical and strategic perspectives seamlessly. So welcome, Earl, and look forward to the conversation.
Thanks, Rob. Yep, thanks for inviting me again.
Alrighty. So agenda for today. Let's talk through what we're going to be talking through. So we're going to talk through about how attacks are shifting right now. We're seeing a shift from systems to people. We'll talk through how trusted tools are being exploited, very common business tools that we use every day, and they're being used to attack us. We're going to talk through what is a reasonable response, and we'll anchor this in real patterns of what we're seeing across organizations. Um, all right, well, let's get started here. So, Earl, we talk about the big shift. So let's talk through this a little bit. What are we seeing? What are we talking about? And what are some of the ways that attackers and how are their tactics evolving? Let's kind of start from there and let's set the lay of the land for folks.
Yeah, for sure. So really what we're interested here in talking about are the risks to identity and identity management systems. Cloud-based applications in particular have made a lot of news in this regard over many years, but certainly in the last little while, we've seen, as Rob mentioned, a tremendous rise in increasingly convincing, believable. There's a few different adjectives you might use there. Types of social engineering in a few different forms, and those are making their way um, out into the wild and being amplified in a variety of forms. We'll talk a little bit about phishing kits and their implications in this context. AI in particular, you can see here in the second bullet point, for all of us, of course, in our professional lives, has become a tremendous um, tool, an augmentation of our capabilities, and it has, of course, for bad actors as well. And in the context of social engineering and sort of identity focused attacks, we're seeing that used to very, very impressive, you know what I mean, effect by bad actors, both in terms of scale of operations and the degree to which they can be tailored and delivered quickly by way of AI-enabled tooling. Um, and of course, the last point here, more connected businesses and means a larger attack surface. Really, there's a few key considerations or points to be mindful of here. Certainly, and quite obviously for most of us, post-COVID and during, many of us transitioned to a more mobile or remote workforce. Prior to that, though, we had, of course, been moving a lot of our operations into spaces like the cloud, just to speak about it generally. And the nature of a lot of our business applications has evolved over time. Many of us are, of course, very familiar with things like Microsoft 365 or Google's G Suite and other similar types of tooling. And our identities, our digital identities, have really become intimately woven in to those spaces, creating a more complex attack surface and larger, absolutely fair to say. And of course, the bottom line here in all of this is that um, attackers know that the access that we have as insiders to an organization is the access that they want, and that they can leverage that access for the very conventional types of attacks that we're all unfortunately very familiar with, whether those are financially motivated or overt operations like ransomware, which many of us know all too well. But attackers also know that they can leverage identities to attack other identities. There's a trust implicit in identity. And so once one identity or account or set of accounts has been compromised, sophisticated actors move very quickly to leverage that trust relationship against others in that initial victim's orbit. So that's an important part of the shift here.
And so we're seeing like, another example is like deep fakes. So like we're seeing more and more of that. At this point, it was kind of a bit theoretical, but it's not that anymore. We're actually seeing this in the wild, and it sounds like AI is really accelerating a lot of this stuff as well. Maybe you can speak to that for a moment.
Yeah, it absolutely is. So there's a few different kind of lenses or maybe themes to kind of slice apart there in the application of AI in this space. Um, the deep fakes that Rob mentioned, this is a technology that I think a lot of us have now come, to understand relatively well. Certainly in the context of social media, we've seen examples of what video technology or what AI can do in the context of video technology. From a cybersecurity perspective, many of us have caught wind of this in the early days through things like CEO or executive kind of fraud attacks, which were sort of an evolution of things like the gift card fraud that was perpetrated a long, long time ago. This has now evolved, and we'll talk a little bit about it at a high level into scams or attacks. They're not necessarily scams per se that leverage IT support in a similar kind of deep faked way. You'll hear a term called vishing or video phishing that often incorporates this type of technology. And we'll talk a little bit more about this as we go throughout, but AI is also an incredible amplifier in terms of the preparation of attacks, the research that an attacker applies to their intended victim. There's an enormous amount of horsepower that AI brings to bear in terms of understanding an organization's online exposure, identifying key organization or people in the organization, et cetera. We'll dive into all of those things a little bit more as we go. Yeah.
Okay, so you've mentioned, the front line is now identity. So can you walk us through like how does this work in practical terms? How are attackers actually getting inside the networks now? You said, Yep.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so a few kind of takeaways here or key points to begin with. So I think the last time we talked about the insider remote employee fraud, widespread. That's one major, very personal way that this is, of course, happening. That bypasses a lot of business controls in the HR context. We've seen a really dynamic evolution in the nature of social engineering attacks, especially in the last year. We'll talk about three examples as we go, but the key fundamentals of social engineering really remain in place. Largely, what these attackers are taking advantage of is the ability to trick a user, either by way of urgency, or any number of other triggers, convincing drivers in a message. And a lot of this can be shaped by information that an attacker gathers, as I mentioned before the attack, to prepare. As one example, the one we're most aware of is an email message. But as we will talk about, these attacks are now coming to us by way of other trusted platforms, instant messaging and Teams and Zoom and these sorts of things as well. The fundamentals of the attack remain the same. So there's a ruse, a lure, some socially engineered mechanism meant to engage the reader or the viewer or the listener, depending on if it is a voice lure, which also, of course, happens. And that is done, any number of ways. There's many that we're already very familiar with, but we are seeing significant investment by attackers to understand the organization, not only to understand who's in the organization, which given platforms like LinkedIn and frankly, many of our corporate websites is quite trivial. but an easy investment in understanding the technology that we use as organizations. So it can be relatively, sometimes it can be easy, sometimes it can be tricky, but with a little bit of probing, you can determine what sort of email service an organization might likely use. They might also have indicators of it on their website, or other services that they expose that suggest to an attacker that a lure designed to engage with Microsoft 365 will work based on something they've identified from a technical perspective. So all of that energy goes into crafting an attractive, enticing lure meant to engage the user. From there, the path in through the attack can follow a few different paths. The one that we're seeing a lot now that is quite worrying and troubling is the use of what we call OAuth applications, which we'll talk a little bit more about as we go again. Basically, the trick here is the user is being convinced to, as we all know, click a link, scan a QR code, as we'll talk about, or open a file, generally speaking, download, etc. Those lures are just incredibly sophisticated. They can also be highly tailored to organizations based on the nature of the attack architecture. The attacker will know, as an example, what organization, if they're attacking many at once, what organization they're actually interacting with at that time, and prepare the lure specifically for that organization, all in an automated fashion. So all of that to say, when it comes to users, the challenge remains the same, that awareness and technical protections are fundamental. Key in the last year is a really impressive rise in the sophistication of social engineering and its application to other communications platforms well outside of email, to tremendous effect, unfortunately.
Yeah. So we're seeing this kind of transition from like infrastructure attacks to identity-based attacks. If they become you, they are you. They now have access as you. They can do anything that you can do. Nothing was really hacked per se. Access was effectively kind of given. Is that kind of a fair summary of what you're talking about?
Yes, it absolutely is. An attacker on the outside looking in is going to be looking for key personnel, but frankly, they'll take anyone to get their foot in the door. But exactly as Rob explained, if you think about the access that you have to your company's data systems, whatever they are, SharePoint, other things, in addition to what is in your email, right? Communications with vendors, suppliers, partners, clients, etc. All of that information can be used by an attacker to prepare additional attacks, in addition to the primary outcome of extortion or data theft, additionally.
Right. So let's go through some real world examples. Can you talk us through a couple of you seen, and I'll mention a couple that we have seen recently as well.
Yes. Okay. So there's a lot of security research publications around social engineering in the last little while. There's kind of three classes of activity that we've been following and really digging into quite deeply now for the better part of a year, at the very least. The first is the click fix or the IT kind of support attack, which many of you will have caught wind of already. It has been covered by security researchers for a little while. Um, it leverages, again, trust in a platform, generally Teams, most common, I think, statistically at this point, just based on general usage, but certainly other platforms as well. And in the same way that I mentioned earlier, the importance of the lure, with this attack, what the attacker is doing is trying to play again on the trust lever and the urgency lever. And generally speaking, what happens in these attacks is a message will be delivered via Teams from an external communicant, and it will purport to be from an IT provider, maybe even inside the organization, but not always. And the lure is meant to entice the user to click what they perceive to be the engagement of their IT support, to give them access to the system, etc. You can think, of course, here of many years ago, the old, it still happens, RDP scams, support scams that were run out on the internet in sort of the public domain a long time ago. Those have now made their way into a much more refined, targeted attack vector that appears in what would seem to be a trusted platform, but which is from an external sender. So that click fix one made a lot of waves, certainly last year, continues to be active and very, very effective. And like everything we're talking about has also evolved. Um, the second is one everyone should be very cognizant of. Again, it's been in the news for a while. Meeting invites or calendar invites, generally using the ICS calendar, sort of a standardized calendar file type. These types of attacks are just very clever ways of circumventing a lot of what are the default or built-in protections that we've grown accustomed to in things like our email clients. Like our email clients have become really proficient at protecting us from spam and frankly, even fairly good social engineering attacks as well, not just spam. But the same protections don't exist as deeply or broadly throughout all of the communications platforms that we use, which is why Teams was one of the ones that bad actors latched onto quickly as a vector that they could leverage to get basically a message in front of a user quite easily. The third, and the one that I'm kind of I hate saying I'm excited about, but I find it very interesting and intriguing because of the real world legs that it has right now, has to do with QR code phishing. And there are other ways, but the QR code is really the most prominent one. And we're seeing this not only in an online context where a QR code is used or sent, just like any other hyperlink would be sent, via email or instant messaging or anything like that, right? But the QR code gives the attacker sort of a layer of obfuscation. Obviously, it's very difficult for the user to look at a QR code and be unsure about it. Rarely do they mouse over it and expect to see the same sort of like URL readout as you might from a traditional hyperlink, depending on how old you are. Um, and importantly, depending on the device that the user is using, if it's a mobile device versus a desktop, they might also have a very different experience interrogating that QR code and may just click the link and follow through. And basically, the pattern is frankly the same, if not just simply very similar. But the QR code, like any other hyperlink, is again, it's meant to engage the user with the lure that has been socially engineered to be attractive and engaging to them. And this has been used to enable OAuth attacks as well. Why this one kind of stands out to me these days and is on my mind is because we're seeing this sort of in the physical world around us. If it hasn't maybe landed in the media in the cities in which you live, it perhaps will. But parking meters, e-scooters, any kind of public pay terminal is at risk of having one of these malicious QR codes prepared, printed off as a sticker and applied to it. This has been happening in our communities for quite a while. In fact, we have e-scooters outside our building to whom this has happened. And the attack is very straightforward, but the QR code is such a compelling and easy trick to leverage from a social engineering perspective. And these are largely financially motivated attackers leveraging these QR code attacks, but we will see and are already seeing the same as a way to get just generalized account or identity access as well. Very clever trick.
So let's talk through why do these work? Why is it, why is he so effective? And we can talk through that a little bit. Basically,
Yeah.
it's just leveraging the trust, right?
Yes, this is exactly it. These points, really, the four there, really kind of summarize it. These are trusted platforms. We expect to interact with others in them. Um, these applications have been designed, rightfully so, to be easy for us to use, to be quick. And attackers are lead users of most technology. And so they find ways very early on to leverage communications platforms in ways that we're not quite ready for as regular users, right? The hyperlink is one simple example, right? Malicious hyperlinks and URL shortening. The attackers were among the first to cleverly use those as ways to obfuscate their attacks. So the trusted platform is the key. They know this. They know this about modern businesses. They know that we live in the cloud. They know that we live in our office suites, whether they're Microsoft or Google or whomever, and they can themselves build capability in those environments very legitimately that can be applied to their attacks. In the OAuth context and others, we see attackers set up their infrastructure in Azure, in Google as well, when they know that they are attacking organizations that use those technologies as ways to obfuscate what's happening and avoid technical detections like we would have in place or help to avoid them. But those, of course, just make it even harder for a regular user to recognize that something might be suspicious in a message. So that's the first and most important piece. The second is
I have a question
oh
there.
yes, of course, Rob. Yeah.
So you mentioned, the Google and Microsoft and like a lot of these attackers are leveraging those platforms. What are the platforms themselves doing to root out, find, discover, expel from their systems to help regain that trust? I'm not sure. I haven't heard much about that.
Oh, that's a great question and a good point, Rob. And in fact, okay, so there's a few things I would say about that. Many of the big uh, service providers in this space are very, very important contributors to sort of the security research domain, generally speaking. So I'm always sort of supportive of their efforts. They do, with some regularity, take down known attack infrastructure, um, domains, cloud services, a whole range of things. Interestingly, we're talking a lot about AI here. Anthropic, OpenAI, and others have also done great investigations to uncover misuse of their platforms and removed users. Um, this is an arms race, basically. The platforms themselves have tremendous pressure to deliver services, to people like you and I who want them and expect them to be fast and easy to use. And in parallel, in the shadows, there are bad actors who are looking to extend the features of those systems in ways that they didn't intend. So
Right.
yeah, it's a race.
Cool. So you mentioned your second one. Didn't
Oh,
mean to stop your flow there.
yeah, I lost my train of thought on that.
So mentioned, so we're talking about trusted platforms, trusted workflows.
Oh, yes, that's right. Right. I was rambling on about how we live in our office suites and the attackers know this, right? And the same extends to the communications vehicles within these platforms, Teams, instant messaging broadly, right? In LinkedIn, there's instant messaging, Meta, all of these things have instant messaging, Zoom as well. These are trusted platforms that attackers are looking to engage us in. Email, it's not to say that email is sort of like an old and done game, but they know that the trust is in the platform and so they're leveraging that and that the workflows have extended outside of email. We don't all just live in our email anymore. We do use instant messaging, we do file transfers, we do all kinds of things like that, and they want to get in the mix. um, the other piece here, the third point, real company context. We in the modern, organizational context, need to share information about us. It's how we engage with the world and gain engagement back. And this is of course a double-edged sword. There's no right answer to it, but the fundamentals here are that if you are an attacker looking to gain access to an organization, and when I say access, I just mean a foot in the door. If you're a financially motivated attacker, which many, many, many are, you're going to be looking for anyone. And as long as you can get one email account from there, you can try and get others. And with platforms like LinkedIn and our websites, it's very easy to gather that information. And then the final bullet, urgency and authority. These are really just the tricks of social engineering's trades. Urgency and authority are just two examples. There are others that might be leveraged. The IT support context is one great example of that, where they're trying to ply you with both to say that there's a technical issue that needs resolving. You might lose access to your account or some such thing. These are just the levers that they push to gain engagement.
Yeah, you mentioned LinkedIn. I can share a kind of real world example. This happened to us actually. We started seeing fake LinkedIn profiles that purported to be employees of our business. And they started liking posts. They started attempting to connect with other folks internally, even get listed as a company employee under under our LinkedIn. Uh, Kind of leveraging you mentioned like leveraging that same level of trust, but they're all fake profiles. And you can report them. They go ahead and take them down. A little bit of a whack-a-mole type of thing going on. But what they're trying to do is leverage that trust and eventually start asking for more privileged information that they think that, hey, I'm a trusted employee. Go ahead and give me some stuff. I happen to reach out to you via LinkedIn. So we've actually kind of adjusted internally some HR process to go ahead and look for these profiles, company awareness, making sure that, best practices, but it's pretty insidious. and we're seeing more and more of that, and kind of live that ourselves.
Yeah, it's the truth. For what it's worth, I think there's a rising trend in. It's not even enough. You don't even have to say advanced or sophisticated actors. It's going to happen broadly speaking, but exactly as you described, Rob. Multiple stages of engagement prior to the actual attack, unless they're extraordinarily confident right out of the gate, or they're just doing sort of like a high volume attack. But yeah, there's a rising trend of yeah, exactly as you described, very, very sinister attempts to sneak into organizations sort of through the front door. We talked, as we mentioned earlier, about HR and hiring directly, but yeah, even just masquerading as an employee in the hope that you might lure a potential vendor to you happens as well.
Yeah, even fake job posts. So let's talk a little bit about, okay, so what are the gaps that businesses have, and how do we start plugging these gaps, and how do we protect ourselves against these kinds of attacks these days?
Yeah, this is a big task for many IT teams. The first bullet kind of captures it here. Our identities have become kind of distributed, or the application of our identity has become distributed in a modern IT context. And so, for an IT team, understanding what systems hold identity information, what accounts, those sorts of things, the sprawl is the challenge. Reining it in, knowing where the outside edges are, and having good plans that you can follow and enforce and maintain over time around the reduction or the management, if reduction is not viable or part of the plan, the management of that identity space. Um, Inconsistent or weak MFA is super common. Yeah, it's I don't know if we'll ever really get away from that, or if there's even a better solution necessarily. One point I would make about this is that MFA is still um, an incredibly important and valuable level of defense that all organizations should leverage as much as they can. Um, but attackers know this, and if, even for a long time, they have been working on ways and successfully circumventing MFA here and there. What we see with the OAuth, which OAuth is just a framework for managing authentication, and what the attackers are able to do is build applications that we as users are then tricked through social engineering into authorizing to have access to our account. Many of us have done this hundreds of times, our Facebook account or a Google account or whatever it is we use to access some other services account. Very, very similar pattern. The crazy thing is these applications, not all, but most, don't worry about MFA. Once they gain a hook into the account, it doesn't matter if the password is changed or MFA state is changed or not. The application retains its access. And it doesn't matter what happens with MFA after that, which is a bit rough. But that is a very, very well-known advantage that attackers are leveraging. Shadow IT and forgotten AI accesses. These are sort of two interesting and tricky pieces of the puzzle. The shadow IT piece has been around for ages for us as IT professionals. We've talked about the risks of shadow IT in our environments. At Field Effect, we always say, know your environment, know the risks to it, and what to do about them. Very, very simply. Shadow IT is obviously those elements that we don't know. For IT teams, there's a lot of things we can do in the security monitoring context to help us uncover shadow IT. And the same applies to AI. We have a very impressive capability that allows us to gain insight into AI agents, their usage, and what they're doing on systems as well. That's really going to become a dynamic space for IT teams to manage. It already is, but this year it's going to get even more frantic. Um, and the last piece being over trusted workflows. I think this kind of is a reflection of, well, of a few factors in modern IT, but we are deeply invested in our office suites. We take for granted a lot of technical protections sort of being in place and invisible to us as users. And when it comes to social engineering in particular, it's that's a risky place to be. Social engineering attackers are really, really, really good at circumventing technical attacks because they often pull their victims, the human, out of a protected space, right? This is why I mentioned like LinkedIn Messenger as one example. They know that there's a risk of detection by engaging you through your email account. So why would they if they can get you to engage them via some other platform, right? So they are trying to pull you out of your trusted workflow um, as frequently as they can, or as we've seen with things like the QR code phishing, the IT scam. They're trying to insert themselves into our trusted workflows in places like Teams, where much of the time, we're very relaxed in our security posture as users.
Yeah. So we basically we're talking about, Microsoft, Google, and they're basically kind of the control center of our businesses at this point. But right now, I think most businesses don't have real-time monitoring, visibility, alerting to these systems and can't really detect if something is really going on until after the fact. Maybe you can talk through that a little bit.
Yeah, this is a key piece of, first of all, knowing the environment. Knowing the environment well enough to put good monitoring in place. Behind the scenes, what we're looking for are behavioral indicators of something being off, something being nefarious. In the context of our identities, there are some pretty predictable patterns that are leveraged from a security perspective, where we are, uh, when we are online or using our tools, what tools we use, with what frequency, all of these sorts of things. And in particular, as it relates to Microsoft 365 or G Suite or other cloud-based tooling, we can build really, really strong models of what is normal user activity in that context, specific to specific users, in fact. But organizations don't, by default, have that level of insight out of the gate. And it does take some time and positioning to get that into place. But once it is in place, that's the level of telemetry about what's going on in your identity space that's required to spot anomalies, to spot things like an application being given access to a user's account that is unrecognized, or a user's account suddenly being accessed from a location that's out of its geographic norms, or files being accessed on SharePoint as one simple example, that are outside of that user's norms. Those sort of behavioral characteristics are really, really important to have good telemetry around.
For sure. So the real question, I guess, where it boils down to, uh, is are we exposed and we just don't really know it? I think that's leadership teams need to really kind of look at themselves and ask that question.
Yeah, this is absolutely it. And there's some simple sort of like mental exercises that can be done in that regard to sort of test, what you know about your cloud environment and your identity protection posture.
Yeah. So if you're curious and want to know where your company stands, we can offer an identity in Microsoft 365 or Google Security Exposure Review. So either dropping us an email at secure@itsasap.com, scan that QR code. It's a trusted one. It's okay. Based on the conversation today, happy to go ahead and help you guys out. Make sure that you have some clarity about what is the level of exposure. Sometimes we've actually run these on some companies and they had ongoing compromises that they were not even aware of. So it kind of provides that clarity and gives you that kind of clean slate, at least making sure that you know what is happening within your organization. Alrighty, so let's move on. We have a bunch of questions have come in, Earl. So let's kind of get to those. This maybe kind of alluded to this a little bit. If someone got into my Office 365 or Google, how would we actually know?
Yeah. So unfortunately, the way most organizations come to find out is, yeah, by the actor doing something that gives away their presence. Um, Sending an attack message from a compromised account or something like that, and then you being contacted by a secondary victim who lets you know. That's unfortunately the reality. But as we discussed, given the telemetry that you might have access to, or might ideally have access to in your cloud contexts, yes, there are indicators of suspicion that you can raise, that can be either investigated or acted upon immediately. The geography piece I mentioned, there are also elements of device profiling that could give away bad actor access to accounts. That telemetry is really, really key. Without it, paying close attention to what's going on in your communication space is really the best you can do. And when I say communication space, I mean that digital environment in which you're a part of, file access, et cetera. If you have telemetry around that, leverage it.
if we already have MFA turned on, aren't we covered?
Mm, right. Yes. So as we discussed, uh, MFA remains very, very powerful and fundamentally a really, really great protection that stops a lot of bad actors. But as we have learned, and in fact knew for quite some time, depending on the nature of the attack, MFA doesn't stop everything. You should absolutely use it. You should ensure that your teams know how to use it. Sometimes it gets in the way of people's lives, and they don't want to use it. But it does provide a high, high, high degree of protection. And like a lot of attacks, attackers are okay, they're definitely not all lazy, but they will move on if an attack is not going well, right? They have a plethora of victims to choose from. So anything you can do to reduce the ease with which they can gain a foothold, you really should.
Right. What is the most likely way our business would get compromised today?
Yes. Um, This, of course, depends a great deal on your business, how you conduct business, the nature of your team, their online presence, and how you communicate. That was a lot to say right there, but the key takeaway here is that social engineering via any trusted communication platform is a very, very common attack technique, and one that all users should understand and be aware of. Um, our teams are not going to worry about 0 days and technical attacks of every sort. We have specific IT teams that manage that, but every user of a web browser is at high risk because our web browsers are our gateway to the internet. Our email clients are similar, and our chat applications are very similar. Those are the vectors, the vehicles by which attackers are looking to get a foothold in our organizations, and we need to make sure that we train our people to be aware of that. Sorry, that's a bit of a long answer about that one.
Yep. What questions should I be asking my IT team that I'm not asking today? Or probably not. I probably am not asking today.
Um, Again, depending on the nature of your organization, you would want to know about what services you're using. Like, what does your current IT environment look like? And what is there a security posture as it relates to that? So you would want to ask your team things like, "Hey, are we using G Suite? Okay, great, we are. So, like, what telemetry or monitoring do we have in place around that? And do we have MFA deployed across all accounts or subset? These are just some fundamental questions. For me, I would always just sort of begin with a lens on getting your hands around what's the state of things? What do we know about our IT environment? And if you're confident there, you can begin to be confident about applying monitoring and insight going deeper.
Yep. A couple more. How do we know if we're spending money in the right places versus just adding more tools?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, your outcomes are going to obviously, hopefully speak for themselves in some regard. I it's hard to know what's working when everything seems to be fine and you're not under attack, but hopefully, part of your security monitoring gives you insight into what you're defending against, into the general state of things, meaning also the security posture. So it's money well spent, to not only just sort of know that you're defending yourself from attacks, but to then gain insight into the state of your IT environment through these investments, right? To be able to know that your patching levels are at some reasonable um, level or frequency, depending on what matters to you. And I think that insight that's tremendous value.
Yeah. How can we get our people to stop clicking links in phishing emails? We've done a tons of training, but it's not sticking.
Yeah. I don't, this is a great question. I love it.
Yeah.
The flippant answer is to say we can't. And the only reason why I say, of course, we can, right? User awareness is very important, and a lot of users are very savvy, and in fact, you know, pass phishing tests and all kinds of just with like complete regularity, right? Um, but attackers, like we talked about going through this, their whole gig is tricking us, and they have tons of time to do it. So it's going to happen. They will figure out a way to get a link or a button or a QR code or whatever's next in front of our users. And so we've got to be ready for that.
Yeah. I would add a couple things that for the security awareness training programs that we have deployed to our client base, the ones that have done the best, it starts with leadership. Uh, it you're basically creating a culture of awareness, of knowledge share, not a culture of shame if somebody were to click on something. Uh, we are seeing benefits in adding gamification. So pitting departments against each other, who's going to do the best, and then giving some rewards around that. Uh, Recognition helps a lot for somebody that has identified something proactively. That is rewarded. Combination of those things tends to lead towards better results. Part of it also as well is taking a look at the type of security awareness program that you have. We've seen different types, ones that are more story-based, more engaging, tends to also attract more attention and get more ingrained into the organization. So those are the things that we've seen. Okay, we've got two more questions and then we'll wrap, unless anyone else submits anything. Uh, you've mentioned a little bit around this. How is AI changing the attacks happening in the real world? So I think you alluded to this a little bit earlier.
Yeah, hugely. I mean, what to say about this? There's an enormous amount to say. To keep it short and simple, AI is an enormous augmentation of our capabilities, and that applies to attackers as well. It has enabled a degree of automation. It has enabled a degree of information processing. Um, enabled degrees unlike that we've seen before. Largely, I think it's fair to say. And attackers are applying this technology very, very creatively, both in the creation and fabrication of attacks, but also in the execution and management of them. The whole thing. And we're going to see a lot more of that exactly in the same way we are with a lot of our IT space.
Ready. Last question that came in here. Earl, what keeps you up at night?
Um,
From a
Up my
security
cat.
perspective.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, sorry, no. Yes, no, I think the risk to users from social engineering is deeply on my mind and has been for a really long time. I mean, technical attacks on systems have a degree of impersonality to them, you know, and there's something about social engineering that I find interesting and troubling, right? It's an incredibly effective attack technique. It's focused on people. People forget, people make mistakes. Systems forget and make mistakes too, but not to the degree people do. That worries me.
Awesome. All righty. Well, I think we'll pause there, see if there's any other last questions. I'll give another couple seconds here. But otherwise, I just want to say thank you, Earl, for sharing your wisdom and knowledge with us. I think it's been super helpful, super educational, and look forward to the next one, next go around with you. Appreciate your time, and thank you, everybody, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks,
Take
everybody.
care.